You are an interesting person. One of my friends said that to me just a few days ago, and it really stopped me in my tracks. Really? I'm interesting. Well, that started me to thinking and praying, and so I'm going to talk to you today about two other things I've heard in the last little while that have also stopped me in my tracks. But the first is, you are interesting. And so my message to you is, you're interesting too. I want to tell you a little bit about what made me interesting. I was 2 years and 2 months old when my younger brother was born. He was preemie, and so my mom and dad spent most of the first 3 months or more of his life visiting him in the hospital. And they had handed me off to a friend of my mom's named Joyce Hilden, and I stayed with Joyce Hilden while my mom and dad spent time with my brother in the NICU at the hospital. One of the stories that I heard later about my period of time with Joyce was she used to laugh at me because I was so independent. My favorite phrase was, me do myself. At the time, everybody thought it was cute. And it really wasn't until later when I realized, later in life, when I was still saying me do myself, rather than reaching out for help and accepting the support from the people around me, was me do myself was my response to feeling neglected. And a couple of years later, I developed an imaginary companion. I think his name was Fred. I know that, remember, he was a giant bunny of some sort, and he was with me for a while. I don't know how long. It was only later when I was in college and doing a lot of developmental psychology and child development study that one of my professors said, have you ever had an imaginary companion? I said, yeah. And so he said, do you want to do some research on imaginary companions? And I did. So I did a research project in my senior year in college that Dr. Daryl Matter later published with me as a co-author, much to my surprise, that about the kind of kids who have developed imaginary companions. It's a pretty widespread phenomena, and I was certainly not the only one, but a relatively small number of kids develop imaginary companions. And I realized much, much later that my imaginary companion was my attempt to solve the problem of feeling lonely. So from an early age, I had figured out that I needed to take care of myself, and I had found a creative way to have somebody that was there for me all the time when my folks were preoccupied with the health and well-being of my little brother. He's a good guy, by the way. The second thing that's made me interesting is happened in the 7th grade. So I was a pretty good student, but not great. I was not the straight A student. I was the A- student guy. But I was a voracious reader, primarily because my parents, when I would be demanding of attention, would say, go read. So by the time I got to 7th grade, I had read hundreds of books, literally hundreds of books. And in the 7th grade, I took a reading comprehension test, as we all did, in class one day. And the numbers were, I read at 1,000 words per minute with a 90% comprehension. That was no doubt the result of all the reading that I had done since I was a little child. A couple of other things happened at the same time. In the 6th grade, we were given the task of writing an autobiography. And I wrote my autobiography and named it Me. me included a story of my adventures as I was a toddler in a stroller. And if you might remember, um, back in the day, strollers had four wheels and a place to sit the kid in, so he could walk around and stay seated and standing, sort of. Well, we lived in a house that had steps down to the basement, and apparently I decided I needed to go downstairs, and so me and my stroller took a little ride down the stairs to the basement. Um, Apparently, I was completely unharmed, but freaked out my parents to say the least. And that was a story that was passed on to me later because I didn't remember anything about it. And so the other thing that happened in seventh grade, my dad had taught me how to play baseball, and I was a good baseball player. Um, I was a 300 plus hitter, and I was a pitcher and shortstop for our Little League team. And one of the last games as Little League baseball player, I was 12 years old at the time, I believe, um, I pitched a perfect game. Um, no runs, no hits, perfect game. And I also hit a grand slam home run in that game. So it was just a phenomenal, phenomenal performance. And as a result, um, the local paper sent out a photographer to take my picture and to post a little story about my baseball adventures in the Madison Daily Leader. That photograph turned out to be something less than totally great experience, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. So after I left college, I moved to Fort Worth to TCU to go to graduate school, and there I also became a member of the staff at the counseling center after I finished my master's in counseling at TCU, and went on to get my PhD at UT Southwestern and a law degree at SMU. That whole adventure was very consistent with my curiosity and drive to be different from my colleagues and friends in the psychology business. Later on, after 10 years as a forensic psychologist and litigation consultant, I took a sabbatical, and during that time, one of my friends from church approached me about becoming a staff member in human resources development at Texas Instruments. And so I went from my sabbatical to working for Texas Instruments in leadership development, and that gave me the opportunity to read a lot about leadership development, but also to expand my knowledge and interests into chaos and complexity, and gave me the opportunity to go to the Santa Fe Institute to meet some of the big guns in the complexity science business, and to expand my knowledge in that arena. That also has led to further interest in complexity and chaos and fractals, which I'm going to talk about in a TED Talk later. The second thing that I've heard from one of my friends recently was, "You are a leader." My friend Dan, who is a successful entrepreneur and IT CEO, approached me and said, "I am getting ready to start another business. You are a leader, and you're supposed to start it and run it." I'm like, okay. That also stopped me in my tracks, because even though I had been in a lot of leadership positions, and I'll talk about that in just a second, it never occurred to me that I was a leader. It was another stop this train moment. Turned out that the position to start a venture fund didn't work out because the money never came through. But nonetheless, the statement that was so direct, I actually heard and understood and processed that I was really a leader. Well, that prompted me to go, okay. So I took an hour or so and sat down and made a list of the leadership positions I'd held going back to childhood. And it turned out that there were 13 leadership positions that I had held since childhood, none of which I sought. People were attracted to me and would follow me, and it started early. Grew up in a neighborhood where we had a bunch of kids around. There were probably 10 or 12 kids in the neighborhood within a couple of blocks, and we spent a lot of time together, especially, well, winter or summer, didn't matter. It was a neighborhood that was very safe. We all knew we needed to be home in time for supper, and in the summertime, home after dark, by the time it was dark, and so lots of neighborhood activities went on, and I was the one who organized them. I didn't realize it at the time, but when we had a neighborhood football game, I was usually the one who started it. When we played baseball during the summer across the street in the parking lot from us, I was usually the one who started it, laid out the diamond, and kept that going. In the wintertime, when the hockey rink across the street in the parking lot was frozen over, I was the one who organized the hockey games. And that continued through some interesting things like in Cub Scouts we did Pinewood Derby. I thought the cars were ugly and we didn't get to do it often enough. And so in the summer following our Pinewood Derby experience, I organized a neighborhood model car race. So we all brought our car models that we had been working on during the winter and raced them down a plywood sheet in a sloped driveway so that we could have Pinewood Derby, quote unquote, kind of races every day if we wanted to. I was a Cub Scout, Boy Scout patrol leader. Didn't ask for it, I was just the leader. When I was in high school, our debate team, I was the guy who developed the strategies and had ideas about fun things to do. When I was in college, I was a worship team leader as a sophomore, and when I was a junior in college, then the campus pastor designated me as the director of all the worship team, 11 worship teams. So I was the director of what we called it Joy Folk Ministry. So I completely, like, it just was a surprise. But it happened to me all the time. As an adult, I became president of Children's Arts and Ideas Foundation, and that was one of those. I volunteered as a speaker to a summer program. I was recruited to be on the board. When I got to the board, they made me the president. And that happened in a short period of time, 2 years total for the whole thing. I was president of SciPac, which was the Texas Psychology Political Action Committee. I was the chair of the legislative committee for Texas Psychological Association. I didn't seek those positions, I got them. And so it's only in retrospect, after my friend Dan said, "You're a leader," that I went, oh my gosh, I am. And I realized that I hadn't really appreciated the value of the platform or the responsibilities, completely the responsibilities for being a leader. Um, After my stint at Texas Instruments and my return to the consulting business, um, I worked for, and it helped to start, a nonprofit organization called In the City for Good. And In the City for Good was an outreach to a community in South Dallas. And as a part of that, I went to a small elementary school to do a readathon. So I went into a room. There were, I don't know, 9 or 10 little kids, and I was given a book to read, and so I read the book. It was apparent to me that these kids did not have the experience of having an adult read a book to them, and it startled me. So, as a result of that experience within the City for Good, I began to research um, how long does it take kids to learn to read, and what happens if they don't learn to read, and what happens if they don't have an adult that will read to them. And the results of the research bothered me a lot. So, in response to that, I started a company called the Reading Company International. And the Reading Company International was designed and founded in order to create a product that would substitute a video with an adult reading a book to the kids with a graphic interface, so that the words would come up as the adult read the book. I organized a network of authors, unpublished authors, through the Writers Guild. I found a production team to help me shoot and produce a demo video for the Reading Company, using the book of one of my cousin, Susan. So Imelda's Shoes was shot and produced as a demo, and my team was people around me from church who heard me talk about the problem of kids who didn't learn to read and the long-term consequences of that failure, and my solution to help them learn to read, because if you can't read, you can't read the Bible. So anyway, the Reading Company turned out to be a fabulous experience. My team was incredibly good, very talented, found an Emmy award-winning video guy to help me produce the video, and we were raising money and getting ready to produce the videos on DVDs when 9/11 happened, and so the capital markets dried up, and the Reading Company went away. But nonetheless, I learned a lot, and it was a leadership experience again, where I became a leader because I had an idea and I had people that followed me. The third thing I've heard lately that stopped me in my tracks was, "I love you." I have a relationship going on with a woman who is 1,500 miles away, and so our contact is online. And I met her because she's a model, and she's been posting. Her management company's been posting pictures of her online, and I commented on some of them. She's gorgeous, and we kind of struck up a friendship, and after a few months of kind of back and forth and regular contact, in one of our conversations, she said, "I love you," and my response was, "You don't know me," and that interaction also stopped me in my tracks. And I realized for the first time that I had learned that I had to perform in order to be loved. And of course, that's a lie. Love is a choice. Love is a decision. Love is not earned, love is a gift. And I, I had trouble receiving it. I had trouble. Um, so I was reminded, Jesus said, love one another and pray for those who persecute you for my sake. And he also said, there are two great commandments: love the Lord your God and your neighbor as yourself. And that was news. Not because I hadn't heard it a million times. It was news because I understood it in a new way, and I realized that my family experience had taught me um, a lie, and the lie was, in order to be loved, you have to be a good kid, you have to behave, and you have to do what we expect you to do, and if you do that, then we will love you. Now, they never said that. They never said that, and um, not sure if I talked to them about it today. They're both gone now. If my parents would agree with that, but nonetheless, that was the message that I received, and so it's now just a few weeks, and I'm still kind of processing the real message of Jesus, which is love is a choice, love is a decision. People love, genuinely love, because God loved us first, and because they make a choice to love someone that they um, have a relationship with or and don't have a relationship with. Um, so the I love you message is the third startling revelation in my life in the last little while. And during my prayer time, I was really prompted strongly to deliver it in a video message. So, you are interesting. This is for you. You're a leader. This is for you. And I love you. And this is for you too. Um, have a blessed day.